Okay, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. I appreciate your attendance. You being here says that you have a strong commitment to public education, and it was related to the Keystone Heights area. Before I get started, I want to make certain that I acknowledge some individuals that have been really a partner in our work and a true leadership as it relates to Keystone. Tonight we have our school board members. We have Mrs. Betsy Condon is here this evening. We also have Mrs. Mary Bola. Mary Bola's in the back. Yep. With us tonight we have our city manager, Mr. Scott Cornegate. We also have our new mayor. This is Mrs. Karen Lake. Congratulations to you as well. I don't know if I missed anybody else, but thank you for being here. Nonetheless, tonight's about identifying proactive steps for us to work collectively in order to identify measures related to safety and building a respectful culture. And for those of y'all who may not know, about a month ago I was able to participate in a forum on Channel 4 called Generation Under Fire. And that was a forum where we held a number of superintendents. It held the forum of a number of sheriffs, local sheriffs from the Northeast Florida area. We had around 20 students, we had parents, we had caregivers, and we all came to a centralized location downtown at Jacksonville University, where we spoke about safety in response to Parkland's tragic event. In that time, when Kent Justice was the moderator, he jump-started the work, and he asked in front of all of the superintendents, all of the sheriffs, all the parents and teachers and educators, the 20 students, to raise their hand if they truly felt safe in the school environment. And after they asked that question, not a single student raised his or her hand. And while students were not from Clay County, I really felt set back in the sense that even though they were not students from our school district, I knew that if surrounding counties from St. John's, from Duval County, from Baker County, from Putnam County, and from Nassau County, if their students felt unsafe at school, then I knew our students in Clay County had the same mentality. Therefore, I wanted to be proactive and take direct steps in trying to find solutions to where our students felt truly safe every single day at school. Therefore, I decided to launch this Listen and Learn in order to have a better understanding of where our students felt, what our constituents felt, what our teachers felt, so that we can take proactive steps to address the safety and security within all of our schools. What I found after 2 hours of the conversation, I found that after all of the superintendents and the sheriffs spoke about proactive steps that they were taking, I learned that the students really just didn't know. They didn't know the proactive steps the schools were taking. They didn't know that the safety and security plans that were introduced and taken within the school districts. At the end of the 2-hour session, Kent Justice turned and asked the 20 students once again, raise your hand if you now have a better understanding of safety and security within your school district. And of the 20 students, 90% of those students raised their hand. And they just provided an insight for me is that I own this as superintendent. I have to do a better job messaging what we're doing within our community. I have to do a better job providing supports and systems to our teachers, to our caregivers, to our students, so they truly understand what we're doing as relates to creating a respectful environment and creating a safe culture every single day. Hence the reason that I've elected to transition going to every feeder pattern in order to speak about the steps that we're taking as a school district. Please know that this is an opportunity for me to engage each of you to discuss, what we can, collectively identify as measures to put in place for our school district and also for our community. I will say that since Parkland, which is February the 14th, Parkland has changed the way we do business, not only locally, but also throughout the state and throughout the nation. And I would say that no student, no teacher, and no staff member should ever be exposed to that horrific act that happened in Parkland, Florida. However, it's a reality. So we can sit on the backside and act like it would never happen to Clay County, as Parkland thought it would never happen to Parkland, or we can stand strong to begin to start the conversation about what we do in order to harden structures, to upgrade our emergency management and crisis management plans, what we can do to make certain that we have resource officers at every one of our schools, and what we can do to have proper training and intense training for intruder and lockdown situations within our community. And this is the reasons what we are doing this evening. There are 4 areas that we will talk about. We'll talk about safety within our schools in general. What does that safety look like? We'll discuss the action steps in Clay County. What are we doing in Clay County to take the proactive steps in order to address this need? And how does the Senate Bill 7026 address the overall impact of us financially, and what does that do for our school district? And then we'll take Q&A, question and answers from each of you this evening in order for me to address any of your questions, but also to have some takeaways for me and homework for me so that we can get better in our practice internally, and Clay County District Schools can ensure that you have a better understanding of what we're doing, but then you can have a voice at the round table so that we can identify proactive steps within our district. I will say that coming in 17 months ago, one of the things I wanted to do is create a centralized focus and create a theory of change. And we know that sometimes change may be uncomfortable, change may be an area that we may not want to engage in, but you got to have change in order to evolve. And me being a transformational, innovational leader, I created this theory of change will allow us to put theory to action as it relates to our body of work. And of these 4 steps, as you can see, the arrow pointing to the first step, which is making sure that we build a positive learning focused community, which is really making certain that we foster a safe learning community within our school district. We know this to be the foundation of everything we do within our school district in Clay County. And we know that if we create the best learning environment for every one of our employees, which have the greatest working conditions, then we can also make certain that we have the greatest environment for our students as well. As that being the foundational piece, we know that once we control the environment, that we can then transition on developing great educators and great leaders. This is where we focus on our retention strategies, our staffing strategies, our placement strategies to make certain that we have first-round draft picks in front of our students every single day in our classrooms in Clay County District Schools. And this is also where we continue to have honesty with our evaluation process to identify what's working, what's not, and what we can do differently. And then looking at making certain that we have strong professional learning to build the capacity of our leaders so that they can work side by side our teachers, and at the same time select curriculi that will help our teachers in order to create a tiered approach to servicing every learner on the continuum as we move forward during our school days. And then once we have this great environment where we have awesome pedagogy from our learners and it's safe, then we transition developing our leaders and our educators, and we can finally get to a point where we focus on the instructional side. What can we do in order to create lift and make sure that we have rigorous activities in every one of our classrooms? And that's making certain that we have the right curriculi from pre-K all the way to 12th grade to provide our students not only to meet grade level expectations, but for them to be able to participate in accelerated options and activities as well. And then after we do that, then the last goal it would be to ultimately is to prepare our students to become full option graduates, in the sense to prepare them to be able to go to the workforce, prepare them for college, or prepare them for the military. And as superintendent, that is my job. My ultimate goal is to make certain that we have a higher number of graduates within our school district, but graduates that are able to compete day one as they transition to college, and also go to the workforce and be able to provide intense work as they transition to the military, if that deems to be their option and their pathway within their transition. I will say that our priorities in Clay County, safety will always be one of the greatest priorities in our school district. But I will tell you that student safety should not be isolated to schools. You being here tonight signifies that the safety and security in public education is extremely important. And I would tell you it's all about 360 accountability. That we have to be a point where faith-based partners, business partners, caregivers, parents, our students and our teachers are all in our law enforcement are all actively working to create a safe environment for our community. And the question is, do you feel safe when you go to the movies? Do you feel safe when you transition to a restaurant? Do you feel safe when your child goes to an event in the community? And you have to be able to understand that it's all directly linked together. In the school district, we will do everything we can to support that mindset. It is unfortunate, however, that we stand here today and we talk about whether or not we're going to put metal detectors in our schools. We talked about whether or not we're going to arm teachers. We should never be having that discussion. We should be talking about how we find additional funding for our teachers, how we give them inspiration, the resources they need to be successful, and how we continue to create the best environment academically, emotionally, and socially for our students. That should be the focal point in education. However, now we are faced to make certain that we are determined as a community to look and figure out what the causation is for the undesired behaviors that are being exhibited by our students and by our youth. What is the ultimate causation of violence? And we have to work proactively to identify the causations, whether that causation is through a relationship with another student, that causation is through whether or not they've been exposed to crime and violence, have they been exposed to some type of trauma, or they are facing any type of anxiety or depression within their lives. We have to do a better job identifying those causations and linking direct supports in order to help. But I'm here to tell you, schools cannot and should not be able to do that in isolation or do it alone. It takes each of you, every family member, community member, to wrap our arms around this problem in order to address it internally. And I will say it's about creating a psychological safe place where kids every single day feel inspired to come to work. They feel ecstatic to come to, I say school, not work. Ecstatic to come to school. They feel safe to come to school. They feel this is an opportunity where they can take risk intellectually and then find pathways that are driven to their heart and pathways that help them develop and reach their full potential. And it is essential as the leader of Clay County District Schools to create a workforce and an environment that is safe and respectful. It is a place where we know that where students can learn, teachers can teach, and the employees can use the support to create a robust learning environment. And we will work every single day diligently in order to make that happen. As we look at, we talk about the state of schools throughout the nation. Since Parkland on February the 14th, we'd have a significant number of threats. And Parkland openly has brought a new heightened awareness to safety and security issues, and we see that there's going to be a number of copycats after that event. From this data, I want to share that over 1,000 threats have been made since February the 14th, and of those 1,000, that's usually around 74 to 75 threats per week throughout the nation. And also, this has impacted over 1,300 schools across the nation. And we see the majority of these threats have been made through social media and also been made verbally, and that we see some have been found in our restrooms and through written fashion as well. I'm a full advocate that says that we get to a point where we know that social media has revolutionized the way we see ourselves, the way we interact with others, the way it creates a positive implication on our businesses and the way we communicate at a faster, greater pace. But it's also brought negative implications through our community. I teased about it last week with someone. Growing up, I only had a pager. I didn't have an opportunity to have, a pager, and you had to read it. You only had a certain number of texts, and your ship was always going off. We didn't have social media. In social media, they're bringing so much negative implications in the sense that it's so much easier for a student to hide behind their words. And it's easier for them to send that threatening and cyberbullying message to another student because they don't have to stand face to face with that individual and see that their immediate reaction. They're so disconnected from it. So they send that information. And this is where I'm not going to get on the soapbox that relates to social media, but I need parents to be actively engaged with their students. What are they doing from a technological standpoint? What are they doing on Instagram? Do they have Facebook on their Twitter account? What are they doing, on their Snapchat? And there's probably so many other things they have nowadays. But I asked you to be actively engaged and involved. And I made a statement the other day that, from my standpoint, and I talk about me and my wife and how we are in our daughter's cookie jar. I have a 17-year-old junior that goes to Oakleaf, and I have a 12-year-old daughter that goes to Oakleaf Junior High School. And they do not have Facebook. They do not have, one has a Twitter account because she has to have it for her collegial coach. But other than that, they don't have these Instagrams and all this other stuff. But what they do have, I can tell you, at 9 o'clock at night, my wife takes the phones and she combs through every one of those social media outlets because they don't understand the negative implications it will cause. And I always say this, and I say it often, as a parent, I'm not looking to be my child's best friend. I'm looking to be my child's best parent. And that is my challenge to each of you. That's my challenge to this community, to be actively engaged in the process of your children. What are they doing on social media? So these types of threats don't occur. Some of these kids think it's funny. It's not funny. in any way, shape, or form, and it will not be accepted or tolerated within the school district. As it relates to Clay County since Parkland, I will openly tell you that we've had 5 threats that are credible threats. When I say that, of these 5 threats, we've had 4 students and 1 adult. 2 were at Keystone and 2 were at Oakleaf, and the adult decided to go to Flemington High School and post a threat while we're on spring break that he's going to blow up and shoot up the school when no one's there. I say that because 4 schools were impacted from these threats. Of these, we made 5 arrests, and that is through the beautiful partnership that we have with our local law enforcement. They can continue to investigate every threat that we get, every threat that I obtain as a school leader and my principal supervisors or principals obtain. We push that directly to our resource officers, and I can't tell you how awesome the Clay County Sheriff's Office has been. I mean, I can tell you that me and the sheriff, along with Chief Stivers, we're up at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning having conversations about safeties, about threat assessments, about causations, about intent, and what steps we take collectively, not only to address the learner, but begin to figure out what we can do from the mental health side of the learner. One of the issues that they had in Parkland is that they expelled this learner and they pushed him out in the community, and they never took proactive steps to address the behavior and mental side of that student. And it's so easy for me as a superintendent and as a leader of the school district, every time a student comes and Addison kicks over this podium, to suspend Addison. Addison comes back the next day and he kicks over the podium again, and I suspend Addison again. But have we ever redirected or refined the undesired behaviors of Addison? We have not. And we are working collectively with our internal partners, with our school psychologists, our mental health social workers, our school counselors, behavioral health. We're looking at right path to figure out how we can have extended to help in order to help create and break the cycle of undesired behaviors that some of our kids and our learners may be exhibiting. We have to do a better job, and I would tell you that I'm excited about the partnerships we have, and I'm excited about the law enforcement presence that we have. But all this to say, of what we've had in our school district, we had 60% were found in a written fashion, and 40% were found on social media, and 3 out of the 5 were found written on our campuses that we found internally. And I will say that with this, with our administration, they are trained to initiate the investigation process, but they understand the power of working collectively with our law enforcement. And those who decide that they want to make threats, whether it be verbal, written, or through social media, I'm here to tell you it will not be tolerated. It is unacceptable, and we will take every threat that is exposed to us in a serious manner, and work proactively to help that learner from a mental health standpoint. But I can tell you that learner will not be back in a general setting in the school in which they make that threat. It's just not going to happen. From us, as relates to what we see from the Senate Bill 7026, which was recently released about a month ago from the governor and recently signed from our local legislation, it gave $400 million back to safety and security through our school districts throughout the state of Florida, all 67 school districts. From that side, it's ultimately to include the Guardian program, and the Guardian program is where they cited an opportunity to arm individuals who did not have a full class of students. In the sense, this would be administration, this would be support staff. It excluded teachers, which is fine, because my job, as I said earlier, is not to arm teachers. My job is not to put a number of guns into schools. My job is to give teachers additional funding, inspiration, and the resources they need in order to improve teaching and learning. But this gives you an option of being able to look at school-based staff who are on campus 100% of the day and do not have pockets of servicing kids. The option of going through an extensive training development sessions through local law enforcement in order to be credible and certified to carry within our school district. I will tell you, from us, our school board passed somewhat of a stance last month, stating that they do not wish to participate in the Guardian program at this time, as they would like to make certain that, and I agree with them, to seek if we can have resource officers in law enforcement in every one of our schools. The problem is it's going to cost money, and I'll speak to that here in just a minute. They gave us funding for school officers, and they mandated that now that we have one resource officer in every one of our schools, and we have 42 schools within Clay County with bringing on new Discovery Oaks. Originally, it was for every 1,000 students, you'd have one resource officer. For those that had more than 1,000, you'd have to put additional resource officer. However, they've come back, and now we're at generation to make certain that we have one resource officer in every one of our schools. If you didn't have the funding to put one resource officer in every one of our schools, then you would have to participate in the Guardian program, in which for us, it's going to be the last resolution for us moving forward. As it relates to this bill also creates an Office of Safety and Security of the Department of Education. They will go around and make certain that we have strong crisis emergency management plans, along with making sure that we have threat assessments, and that we are treating this with highly importance, and that we are having true articulation agreements with our local law enforcement to have greater supports within our school district. And this is looking at proactive steps that we have in order to make sure that we are hardening our structures internally for our students. In this bill, it looks at providing additional funding for mental health. As I spoke about with the Parkland situation, there was a separation of figuring out what behavior mental health wraparound services are provided. We know that this is a major indicator and resource that we have to do better in, especially at the junior high school level, and then starting at the later years of our elementary level. As they transition to their high school level, they start to really make some hard stances and movements with some of their thoughts that they have. So we've got to do a better job catching our students at an earlier stage. And then they look at school hardening. What are we going to do to have single points of entry? Are we going to where we're going to have metal doors in our schools? Are we going to look at having bulletproof blasting? Are we going to increase our fencing? So there are grant money that we can apply for in order to harden our structures. All this to say is that it's been built. This Senate Bill 7026 has been built to improve the safety and security within school districts around the state of Florida. And then, but I will tell you openly that this is underfunded. We did not get sufficient funding to put resource officers at every one of our schools. I'm telling you that openly. We did not get sufficient funding to harden the structures that have been deferred for so many years in Clay County to make certain that we are ready to go right now. We did not get sufficient funding in order to continue to provide extensive professional development to our teachers and our staff in order to make certain they understand how to intrude the intruder process. We will work collectively with our law enforcement to make that happen, though. This is why I have come to make sure that you have a voice as a community member to discuss your aspirations for what this looks like, how we use this funding, how we continue to have conversations as superintendent with our law enforcement, and how I continue to have conversations with our board and internal staff to make sure that we have a plan moving forward. As it relates to funding, Clay County received $2.5 million additional dollars as it relates to this Senate bill. Around $2.5 million. You can see safe school money is the money that we have put on resource officers. I will tell you the county and the sheriff's office, while we get $580,000 this school year, it usually costs around $1.2 million to make it systemic. And we only have 8 resource officers in our high schools and 1 at Bannerman Learning Center. We do not have resource officers in junior high schools nor in elementary schools. So as we look about in 18-19, we did receive $1.8 million. Of the $1.8 million, there's a difference of adding a $1.3 million to our budget. I will tell you, after looking at making certain that we have capital, and I say capital funds with and also the safe school funds, we needed a minimum of additional $3 million. Because not only are we trying to put resource officers in every one of our schools, we have 42 schools we have to have resource officers in. We have 2 charter schools that fall under my umbrella. In addition, you have to have an opportunity for relief officers. That means that if someone needs additional supports, we have the ability to send someone. If someone's out for injury, if someone's out for FMLA, if someone's out for so many different reasons, we've got to have someone that's at the school every single day. So you've got to have a number of relief officers. And then you've got to be able to make certain that for every 7 to 10 officers in the standard in Clay County, I believe is 5, you've got to have a sergeant, and you've got to have someone to direct the work. So there's not only do we look at employing all of these law enforcement individuals, but then you look at capital outlay. You look at capital expenses. We've got to buy the vehicles. We've got to buy the devices. We've got to buy equipment. We've got to buy uniforms. We've got to buy certifications and trainings. And that's going to be around over $4.5 million in order to make this become a reality within our school district. I openly tell you this because when they set our new budget for 18-19, the state gave me 47 cents per student allocation. That means they got an additional $17,000 from the state. We can continue to do, more with less. And this is why we have to continue to push and rally behind education and try to figure out how we're going to be fiscally responsible. I will tell you that openly, when we talk about resource officers, we need over $3 million. And we look at infrastructure upgrades, we need over $12 million in order to harden our structures to be able to have immediate supports for our schools. I am proud to say that my school board and the school board and myself, along with the sheriff's office and the county commission, we will have a roundtable discussion on Wednesday. We will talk about financials. We'll talk about what we can do to figure out a plan to put resource officers in every one of our schools. I have openly went to the county commission and along with board members, and I stand toe-to-toe with the sheriff to ask for these additional funding. Because I said earlier, safety can't be linked directly solely in the minds of schools. We've got to have greater supports, and we've got to have additional revenue in order to make that happen. As you look at, we got $900,000 to do some great work with mental health, and which is an expenditure we've never had. And then we'll continue to have SEDNet, which is a deployment of resources for those families. Not only do we work to develop the whole child, but we are moving to develop the entire family. And we can provide resources, whether it be medical, whether it be counseling, whether it be utilities. We are there to help, and SEDNet's standing strong to continue that body of work for 18-19. And then we have the community partnership schools. This is what we just launched in the Wilkinson Junior High School model. This is where we bring a number of nonprofit organizations together in order to have greater touches to our community, which I'll speak to later next year. This year we got $100,000. Next year we are seeking to grow that and really put a community partnership school in the Keystone area as my next step as we have additional funding, and I'll explain what that looks like. But overall, I give you this data and this analytic because we need money. We need to figure out, with a $15 million, where's that money going to come from? I openly can tell you with the $17,000 I received from the state, it's not going to happen. So we've got to figure out what additional revenue streams can we generate, and then what can we do from my side can I look at to selectively abandon in order for this money to come to assistance. And hence the reason why the roundtable will take place on Wednesday to seek assistance from our county commissioners who've been awesome in the think tank. They have been working to find strategies that we can implement for moving forward in the 18-19 school year, but also looking forward to have a systemic change in student rate. I will tell you, this is a chart about Keystone. This is all of the schools in the Keystone area that talks about overall discipline and the conduct. I can openly tell you that we do not have discipline problems overall within this grade band. This really signifies the average number of referrals per student on campus, and we clearly see a decrease in referrals through every one of these schools. And if we look at Keystone, sorry if I'm in your way, if we look at Keystone Elementary, McRae, along with Keystone Junior Senior High School, and then it's compared to the district, we see that there's a decrease, and this is because we have greater focus of our students. We have greater student engagement, greater ownership, greater accountability. We have teachers that are having to have more resources to maximize the learning time. We have teachers that are working rigorously to gain access to our learners to create beautiful pathways. We have focus on student ownership, and also we have greater accountability for student accountability within our classrooms. And this is all hats off to the leaders and the teachers in our schools in order for us to move forward. Additionally, this is our suspension rates, and I will say the solid is in-school suspension, whereas I couldn't find anything to signify, so I had squiggly lines, so excuse me for the way it looks. Squiggly lines identify the out-of-school suspension rates, and this once again shows that that the Keystone feeder pattern is decreasing in the number of students who are being placed in in-school suspension and also out-of-school suspension. As I talked about it, we've got to have a better opportunity to keep students in school, however, have a part of restorative practice and justice where they refine, they think and reflect about their actions in our school district, and that they can have greater ownership and accountability to consequences and linked. But this is showing that we are trending downward and we're keeping students in schools. And that's ultimately our goal, is to keep students in schools, but also have greater accountability for what their actions they may take within our school district. I would see that the significant decrease in out-of-school suspensions in McRae. At the same time, we have, with McRae here, then Keystone Elementary as well. But then Junior Senior High School is doing a great job, which is mirroring what we're doing in our school district. Overall, this is a pattern of arrest, and I wanted to show you this is every feeder pattern within our school district. for all 7 of our high schools. If you see the Keystone area, it gives you a progression. I believe it's a 5-year progression. These are arrests not just happening in schools. This is information and data that we have received from the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and along with the Town of Orange Park, along with the Green Cove Police Department. These are just arrests of youth that are within our school district. As you can see in the Keystone area, we continue to have a decrease of arrests, and these arrests were for the 2 threats that were made in our school district. But this shows you a greater focus on problem solving and educating our youth on the consequences that they will face if they elect to make a poor and undesired decision. In addition, we see that these arrests are going down because in our high schools, I can tell you, our resource officers are awesome. They're not just there to enforce the law, which I know is a big part of it. They're there to be a mentor to our kids. They're there to help them problem solve and help them grow and develop. And we see that those continued activities, and they play a part of lunch and learns in our elementary schools along with our junior high schools, so that we can have so they can see the law enforcement in a positive light and moving forward. And then I would tell you there's just greater accountability in our school district. My job as superintendent is to hold students accountable, but at the same time, my job is to break the school to prison pipeline. It's my job to make certain that we give kids a sense of hope and an extension of services. But at the same time, if there's a law that's broken, and I say this openly, whether it's a school district leader, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a student, then we will take immediate action and link law enforcement in order to take the proper steps to move forward. But we want to take preventive measures. We want to have interventions in place so that our students can make the right decisions as they move forward throughout and progress throughout our school district. So the questions may ask, what are we doing since February 14th? And this is where we put some information together about those 20 students. When they raised their hand, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't feel safe because they just didn't know the steps we were taking in the school district. You'll see here that we are, and I'll put these up. We've updated operations to our campus for our emergency management system. We are, every school has a color-coded flip chart of how to accessible for emergency management protocols. We have provided a visitor management system, the Raptor system, for every individual that comes to a single point of entry to our school district. They have to take their ID and swipe their ID before they gain interest, so we make sure they're able and have the ability to be around kids. We also we've asked us to lock every single exterior gate, every single door, exterior door, and also interior door during the school day. That way that we can have single points of entry. We are creating better opportunity for single points of entry to make sure that there's greater locations for parents, business partners, volunteers to come to the main office, where they then, once they show their accessibility of their ID and it's ran, that they then have to sign in and then be granted access to go to the remaining body to see throughout the entire organization of the school. And then we are making sure we are leveraging behavior and mental health specialists as we do, as we talk about school psychologists, school counselors, and internal and external staff that we have for social workers. And then we have directed staff to review. We have, in the process, we are in the process of updating emergency and crisis management plans. But for some reason, you can't see it. I'm pushing buttons and it's not going. Also, I'll just speak to it. There's a lot more stuff on here. But you're like, whatever, dude, let's get to the questions. But when we get to a part where we've asked to have greater management and training for our administrators, we've turnkeyed that with our administrators in the last 30 days. And they have turnkeyed that with staff and also our students within our school district. And then we are really focusing on the see something, hear something, say something mentality. The bulk of our identifications of happenings in our school from threats have been from students coming to administrators and teachers and having the conversation about what they've heard or what they've seen. And this is the beautiful mentality that I'm thankful for our teachers of having great relationships with our students, but also our parents coaching our students to say something when they hear something to our staff so that we are ready to take immediate steps and start the investigative process. And then we have identified a district safety specialist that would drive all the safety work within this organization. So when we talk about steps that are in progress, well, we always have steps that we've completed. There's always steps that we have in progress, and there's always steps that we have for future work. And we talk about steps in progress. We are increasing the monitoring and surveillance of every one of our schools to make sure not only do we have The cameras are readily available, but how can we figure out how that connects directly to the sheriff's office so they can see live with us as well? So that's not only from a reactive standpoint, and we're trying to find individuals after the fact, but how can we link that with law enforcement so it can be live and that communication, that visibility can be immediate through our school district. We're also refining the number of fire drills, lockdown drills, and weather drills that we have conducted within our school district. We are increasing the intruder drills that we have had within our school district to make certain that our students are prepared, but our teachers actually know what steps are taken in order to secure our students in themselves. We are increasing visibility and accessibility of law enforcement. You'll see that law enforcement continues around throughout the community, especially at elementaries and junior high schools, to be visibility and being accessible to our school district. And then we are refining school and district-based emergency management plans, and we are conducting assessment needs every single day right now to figure out how much fencing costs, single points of entries cost, what do we got to do to harden our structures internally. What we have to do from the future, we have to improve the hardening and infrastructure. We have got to figure out what we can do to protect portables. As you know, in Clay County, we have over 900 portables in our school district, in which 700 plus of those portables are 20 years or older. We have got to figure out how to secure those locations. We've got to do a better job figuring out what our fencing looks like, points of entry, are we going to have portable metal detectors? And then I really want to make certain in the future that every teacher had some type of panic button that either they wear in their classroom, that they can have an immediate signal that goes to fire rescue, or immediate signal that will go directly to the law enforcement. That way we don't have to stop, pick up a phone, text message, call the principal, call the assistant principal, the main office to figure out what's going on. It's direct. Every second matters. And this is an opportunity for us to think differently, to have immediate response systems to our EOC. I can't thank enough what Mr. Ward does for this community in the EOC. He is an awesome partner in our work, and we want to be able to connect with him as well, and we're thankful for what he does. Also, a placement of resource officer at every one of our schools. This is a future action that we will hopefully finalize in the next week. I have to the first week of school to make this happen. But as the sheriff spoke to the county commission office last week, he's got to start hiring now, because every school district in the state is going to have a problem trying to find individuals to go in law enforcement who have the mentality, who have the skill set and the will set to go. And the recruitment process has to start now. I will say the county commission did an awesome job. They gave the sheriff a go-ahead so he can initiate the hiring stages. That shows to me that they are willing to partner with us and help us find a immediate solution in order to make this come to fruition. In addition, we're going to establish a crisis and bullying hotline in 1819 for every one of our students to call in. It'll be anonymous. That way that we can start having a formalized way of accepting information so we can take immediate steps in the investigation process to figure out what's going on from crisis, so we can have a crisis interventions team to help, in addition to make certain if any bullying is going on, that the caregivers, parents, along with students, feel that they can call a hotline from an anonymous standpoint so we can initiate that process in the investigation. Along with that, we're going to look at conducting risk security assessments with local law enforcement. That means right now I did my own internal assessment, but I need to have the eyes of the law enforcement. That will be taking place in the next 30 to 45 days with local law enforcement to figure out what we have to do in order to protect our schools. We know that we want to build schools where no one penetrates the sanctity of it, but we've got to have the information from the law enforcement to figure out what steps that we can do in order to better harden our structures internally. And then also for 1819, we will be conducting and creating a behavioral mental health plan that we will present to the board that's attached to $900,000 so the community knows exactly what we're doing. We're just not going to have $900,000 of soft money. We're going to put a proactive plan in place so that the board can approve and understand what we're doing, so that we can gain access to our learners in a greater manner at an earlier stage within our school district. And then we will be developing a threat assessment team as well in our school district. I will tell you that we will not only will we have the threat assessment teams, but we will do some random work as well. As I look for preparation, I wanted to share with this. To date, we've conducted over 350 drills within our school district. over the 41 schools that we have. 42 will be next year with Discovery Oaks going on. And this has included the lockdown, intruder, weather drills, fire drills. And then we also have had updated training with our administration so they truly understand what steps to take and how to share that information with our caregivers and our students. For next steps, we will have intense professional development. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. We will have intense professional development for all administrators on the new emergency management plans that are moving forward in the summer during our institute. We will have mandatory training for every teachers on the emergency and crisis management plans during pre-planning. And then within the first 2 weeks, we're going to ask them to train their students in their classroom so they know what steps to take in order to secure a safe environment. And then within the first 30 days, we'll have mandatory drills, mandatory weather drill, intruder drill, lockdown drill, fire drills, so that we are greatly prepared for any event if exposed to it within our school district. On the bottom, you can't read, but as we do a minimum of 7 fire drills, 4 lockdown drills and 2 severe weather drills, and then we'll have 2 additional intruder drills that we will make come to fruition. The behavioral health plan, some steps that we've already taken to date, and I'll leave this up here for your review, is every school has a school counselor, and we're looking to have better leverage of the school counselor to be able to meet with students, to talk about any traction that may be causing a barrier to their progress emotionally, socially, and intellectually. We are also looking at, we've also could develop a district crisis intervention team. Any crisis that may be exposed at our school from students or to teachers or the community, we send that crisis team immediately to that school to help them have accessibility to that team who are clinical experts to help them from a mental health standpoint. And we will leverage all the internal social workers, psychologists, and district level specialists. And then we have nurses at every one of our schools as well. And I can tell you, most school districts around the state do not have nurses at every one of their schools. This is something I'm proud about in Clay County that they put in place. And they have accessibility to help and provide assistance to our kids. And then we have an employee assistance program to help with mental health for our staff members. And that can only help and turnkey that with our students as well. And then we have great partnerships with external behavior and mental health with Right Path, Play Behavior, and the Children's Home Society as well. What do we have in progress? Well, we have put motivational coaches in every one of our junior high schools. We have 3 junior high schools to go to make that happen by the close of the school year. They work with individuals who are around 75 to 100 students at every one of our junior high schools who are exhibiting undesired behaviors with attendance, academics, and behaviors. We know that those are really early warning indicators that where kids start to get off their path and exhibit undesired behaviors. But we have those individuals to work with them every single day in our schools. This is a new initiative that I brought with staff. And they are excited about working with cohorts of our learners. We know that in junior high school, kids, they mentally drop out of our schools. And as they get to a point where they transition to high school, they physically drop out. So we have got to get to a point where to grab them at an earlier stage. And this is our strategy in order to help kids get organized, in order to help students be exposed if they're experiencing any type of problems. In addition, what I'm bringing to the Keystone area for 18-19 is community partnership schools. As I said, we launched this at Wilkinson Junior High School. This is about nonprofit business organizations such as faith-based partners, higher education, business partners in our school district that will bring services to our schools and our entire community. This is where we will bring individuals who have barriers to medical accessibility, who have hunger issues, who have mental health issues, who have healthcare issues, and who have been exposed to violence and crimes. They will have that accessibility in our schools. For example, if we have we have a family that doesn't have accessibility to go to a doctor, or doesn't have insurance, or does have insurance and can't get to the doctor, we're going to have that doctor on site at our school. And that way that we can see our student, we can treat that student, and we can get that student well, we can get that student some medication, and get that student directly back into our schools. And same thing with mental health or exposure to anxiety or depression. We will be not only to have access to our kids, but our families who have needs as well. They can come to the school, have to go to the Raptor system, be exposed, and be able to be serviced within our schools so that we can have greater outreach to our community. It's just not about kids, it's about our families, and we want to be able to have that accessibility. And that will be coming in the 18-19 school years. We'll start to launch that pattern, which will be at this school. We will also establish greater early warning indicators for our teachers in our administration and we will be launching youth mental health first aid training. We've already launched, had a soft launch this year, and we will have a greater presence with training. That's where we will help introduce common health challenges to our youth. As I said earlier, these are and train our teachers and administrators to deal and identify early warning indicators and awareness of whether or not a kid has depression issues, anxiety issues, or they have substance abuse or behavior disorders, so that we can have early indicators to figure out what resources we need to put them through in order to better provide assistance for that learner. And then we are looking at the full service model concept for the 18-19. It's going to take funding, but we hope we can get that. If we do, we want to bring that to the Keystone area. I say all this is that, and I bring to you a $15 million deficit, is that we've got to find additional way for revenues. And I'm not a one that says, hey, I'm excited about whether or not we increase the millage, or I'm excited about whether or not we have to go out for a half-cent penny tax. But I tell you, we have to do something as a community. The state and from the legislature, they're not giving us sufficient funding in order to provide resources to our students in education. But I can tell you as a community, whether you have a student that's in our system or not, education impacts everyone. It is the foundation and the gateway and the gatekeeper for us to give our students a sense of hope, to have them to fill their aspirations and fulfill their potentials. And the way to doing that is to have greater accessibility to greater resources in our schools, and the way to do it is to find additional revenue sources. We've got to have greater lighting in common areas in our school district. We've got to have greater software that provides interaction between law enforcement. We don't have that. It's going to cost money. I want to take all of our emergency management and crisis management and put it on a software platform, so it's not through hard paper, but it's through accessibility through the web or through media, through our smartphones, where teachers can have it accessible and interaction immediately, or through tablets, they can take immediate actions. Also, we want to add unarmed security monitors in our schools, and to have more accessibility and visibility to figure out who's coming on campus, to make certain kids are not in common areas that are in our classrooms, to have greater controls. We've got to also look at resources in every one of our schools and look at having public announcements systems that not only look at internal in our hallways and our classrooms, but the announcement system that goes external through the community. If you're on the football field, if you are if you're walking from class to class, from the hard location to a portable, you're able to hear what's going on. Right now, we don't have that function because it's been deferred for so long. In addition, to look at having portable handheld devices for as I said earlier, for crisis emergency management, and then also look at decon radios from every one of our schools. And I say that so every one of our schools has a radio, which I know Bruce Harbin is working through right now. That he does great work as our district liaison for safety in our school district. But for them to be able to coordinate if a incident's happening at a school, that they link not only from school to everyone in the school district hears it, but I have the availability as the superintendent to come on and talk about what's going on in our school district. If there's an intruder, if there's a lockdown in the community, not only do we have that accessibility for our leaders, but also through our law enforcement and fire rescue and emergency management, so everyone can communicate and know what's going on through our school district. And then making certain that we have accessibility for additional softwares, and then hardening our instruction for new locking mechanisms. What do we do to secure this from the main school, from anyone just walking on campus? And then making sure that we have single points of entry for our school district. These are all things that we have to do. I will tell you that St. John's County, #1 school district in the state, went for two additional revenue sources to harden structures, and also to improve the experiences in their schools. Orange County went for 2, and then Manatee is moving, and Monroe's moving for 1 as we speak right now. But my job as superintendent is to take 4 additional steps for us to work collectively. My job is to prepare, prevent, respond, and recover. My job is to make sure I have sound crisis management, emergency management plans for the school district to protect the working conditions of our adults and our students. And my job is to prevent, make sure that I engage the community to establish open lines of communications about what we're doing for our culture, what we're doing for reinforcement for mental health, and then what are we doing to harden schools, and to take preventive measures so if we're ever faced with an undesired situation that we are ready. And my job is to respond. How will we respond to that? By engaging the community members, the law enforcement staff, and then recover. And recovery is always the most important one, because we need to review, update, and refine our work in order to ensure overall effectiveness. So Now this part is for you. It's no longer about me sitting here speaking to you about the steps that we're taking as a school district. Tonight you have had the availability to have cards at the end of the rows. We're asking you to, tonight we're going to have, there's two ways we're going to ask Q&A, question and answers, that we will take your questions. One way is through this card system. If you have any questions, we're asking you to write the questions on the cards and push that, or just raise it. I'll have staff come and to obtain your cards. They will ask you, they will lead the work for asking your question that you may have. Please know that any question you may have, I will do my best. I'm trying to move these because they have a little feedback. I will do my best to answer every question. Maybe it goes back. To answer any question that you may have related to Keystone or related to this entire school district. We also may have some individuals who are watching on Facebook Live that may have questions. We will stop and ask them. We will answer any question on Facebook Live, and in order to be respectful for their time, as they may not be able to be here, but they're able to watch it through their smart device or through their computer. Okay, so this is the part where this is your time, and we'll take the first question. Oh, sorry, before I go further, I have a team of individuals that are here tonight to help us with this question, because this is a team approach. We have Dr. Kemp, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Operations in our school district. We have Mr. Fossa, who leads our work under. Mr. Fossa, introduce yourself. My turn. Yeah, that doesn't work. Sorry. There we go.
Yeah. I'm Jim Fossa. I work with Dr. Kemp in planning and government relations.
Yep, facilities planning. You may know this young man. This young man is I don't know what's the boxes. I'm sorry. I've got like 32 mics. I'm sorry. I just hit something. Doesn't even work. Here we go. I got like 32 mics. One for Facebook, one for here, one for all kind of stuff. So bear with me. Go ahead, sir.
Aaron McWilliams, Principal, Keystone Junior and Senior High School.
I'm Ken Stivers. I'm Chief Special Operations, Clay County Sheriff's Office. With me is Chief Wayne McKinney, who's Chief of Investigations, and Director Barnes, also from Clay County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so we'll take the first question. That's so much better.
Okay. And I'm Katie Moeller.
Sorry, this is Katie Moeller. She is the Director of Professional Development, here being a team player tonight.
First question, Mr. Davis.
Yes, ma'am.
It's around guns,
Okay.
arming teachers, or having a designated employee. And will the guns be concealed, open carry, and loaded?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Well, Senate Bill 7026 eliminated any teachers being armed in our school district, which is great. Originally there was conversation about teachers being armed and ready within a classroom. Teachers have so much to do. I mean, we'll put one thing on them as relates to giving them weapons. It's too much. They got an education to inspire kids. They got an education to teach standards. They got an education to develop them and our kids socially, emotionally, and intellectually. So the good thing is that they're not being exposed to this. They have so much with differentiate instruction, for them to look at analytics, to teach classroom, to address misbehaviors. There's so much going on. And the Senate bill eliminated individuals who have a full class load. As it relates to the Guardian program, it does give accessibility for school leaders and also for support staff. And I may say whether it's a custodial staff member, whether it's a support staff member who doesn't service kids every single day on the full schedule, it gives them availability to have a concealed, it's all concealed, weapon. And the answer to answer the question of whether or not it be loaded, it will be primed and ready to be trained in order to address any intruder. From our side, as being the stance of the board and through conversations, right now the Guardian program will be the last resort right now within the Clay County District Schools. It's not about whether or not Addison Davis is a supporter of the Second Amendment rights and grew up around gun awareness, but it's about what mechanisms can we put in place to protect our kids. And I believe that by having law enforcement, and the school board does as well, through the Clay County Sheriff's Office being on site, that provides us individuals who have greater training, greater visibility, and greater access to the work.
Thank you. Guns in a locked desk. Will the policy be to alert the public if a gun is missing?
Yeah, so right now we don't forecast having guns locked anywhere in the school district. So anyone that will be participating in carrying, whether it's if we have to use the Guardian program, All the concealed weapons will be on that individual. Nothing will be locked in a locker. Nothing's going to be locked, in a desk, because we just don't want a recipe for disaster. Let's just say Addison Davis is roaming around school one day. Addison Davis goes into a classroom. Addison Davis is looking for a pen, a student. I'm looking, and I find a Snickers bar, and I turn around and I find a gun. Oh, Addison Davis got a gun. So now we've got a major problem, and we just don't want to be put in that situation. And it's not best practice to leave guns unarmed, untrained, and locked up. Anything from else, Chief?
No, you covered it.
Okay, I want to make sure. I was in there speaking. I'm trying to get a badge. He told me no. I'll keep working on it.
Sir, a gun with one, this is a suggestion and they
Okay.
are asking how you feel about it. A gun with one teacher and bullets with a separate teacher.
Yeah, so, I said it earlier, seconds matter. Seconds matter. So anyone that we have on our campus that will be approved, whether it be through law enforcement or the Guardian program, they will have accessibility to guns and bullets. So they are able to actually use it and not go across the hallway and ask, hey, can I have a bullet? I'm not trying to be disrespectful of the question. I'm just saying that, if something's happened in my classroom, I don't have time to make a call or a lifeline. Can you bring me a magazine? And can we go to work? So we want to make certain that we have adequate training and that those individuals who carry are prepared and ready to address an unfortunate situation if ever exposed to it. Anything from Facebook Live? We're good? Okay, maybe not.
A change in subject. What is the district policy on children leaving class to protest anything?
What is their policy? Say it again.
What is the district policy on children leaving class to protest anything?
So right now, I'm just going to be open. We have April 20th coming on board. And April 20th is a national walkout day that has grown legs throughout this nation. This walkout day is directly linked to, from my side and my understanding, directly linked to the 17 lives that were lost in Parkland, Florida. I will tell you this, from the side of superintendent, anyone that walks out of class in an unorganized, structured activity will be disciplined. And I say that from my side of it. I will tell you though, if students decide to walk out in schools and classrooms, I'll be openly telling you, you're not going to stop them. Students are going to walk out. And in this situation, you have to be very delicate in how you allow kids to have voice. And the only way that we participate in the 20th is through having conversation about the lives lost in Parkland. No way, shape, or form are we ever going to be an advocate where we allow politics to come into our school district. We're not going to allow individuals who want to walk out for gun rights. We're not going to allow individuals who want to walk out against gun rights walk out in any way, shape, or fashion. We're not going to even have a debate about it, okay? But we will, I'm openly telling you, as an educator, we will have a structured, signified opportunity for those to reflect on the 17 lives lost in Parkland. We will. And as an educator, I hope someone will stand with me. And I can only imagine what Superintendent Runcie has gone through this school year. It's unimaginable. But we've got to have a forum to listen to kids. And through that, whether that's then to have a Socratic seminar about conversations about their feelings to what happened in Parkland, whether or not they have 17 seconds to walk out to walk out in the hallway and come back into their classroom to signify those kids and teachers who lost their lives, whether or not they reflect through writing. That will be a part where we see that we want kids to be engaged. Kids ought to have a voice. As soon as you turn that voice off, you create more and greater problems. And my job as superintendent, I'm openly going to tell you, I'm going to stand with kids every single day. I'm going to stand with kids every day. Anything from Facebook? No Facebook. All right. She's with us. She's with us. She's with us. Just kidding. Okay. Well, we had some Facebook Live stuff. Sorry if you're back. Good to see you.
Mr. Davis, this is a suggestion someone has for Keystone Heights High School. Could a fence be put in that would allow students moving from the main building out to the gym area be within the safety of this fence at Keystone Heights High School?
Yeah, so I have to understand more of where the desired fence is. We are in the process now of our initial analytics of figuring out what we need to do to harden structures. We want to be able to secure every campus with fencing, because I think that's the first barrier. I will openly tell you that a fence will never stop a behavior of mental illness. And someone have the availability to jump it and cause harm. Some can sit on the outside of the fence and cause harm. So I will lead to staff, Mr. McWilliams or staff. I'm not certain what fence we're talking about, but if there's a need, we're definitely on it.
Yeah, I'm Mike Kemp, Assistant Superintendent for Operations. We have actually conducted needs assessments at this point of all of our facilities that we can have an immediate impact with on perimeter fencing. And we've actually looked at the needs of every facility overall as a scope. So we conducted a detailed needs assessment. Just to give you an idea, you have $21.2 million worth of project needs right now, just in the Keystone area alone. You have 157 academic core classrooms, and the average facility age at the Keystone Heights High Schools, if you average this, is 43 years of age. So when the superintendent tells you and this board tells you that we're in the county, or county commissioners say we're in need of revenue, we really are, to be able to provide the safest securities, the most relevant facilities for our kids. We can. Fencing is a major part, but so is controlled access. So is additional surveillance, as the superintendent mentioned. So is security alarms. And one of the biggest challenges you mentioned tonight that we have from the facilities perspective is the fact that we really do have 982 portables. And regardless of somebody's philosophy on brick and mortar space versus mobile space, I can tell you that portables are difficult to secure. They're very, very difficult to secure. They've always been a temporary solution. And we have a plan in place for each feeder pattern in this needs assessment that addresses more securable, more permanent securable space for all of our schools.
Principal Mack, sorry, McWilliams, I call him Mack. This walkway we speak to, if there's any, we can show staff or myself, we can walk it this week. Okay, we got it. So to answer your question, we will definitely look at the fencing. If there's definitely a need that will act as a barrier to separate the community from the school, then we will look at putting that fence up. But we are working right now to make sure that we have fencing in every one of our exterior buildings. UNO has been, being in a junior, senior high school, or even a high school model, the single points of entry have greater difficulty because you have kids, so many kids, and we're trying to funnel them into school. So we have greater needs to figure out what doors, exterior doors do we close, and then what exterior doors do we man. We are trying to coach and teach every learner, especially in the elementary level, because our kids are being very respectful. And so when an adult comes to the door and knocks on it, they're opening the door, and you never know who that individual is. So we're trying to get little ones not to open the door, even at the high school level, not to open the door for a student that doesn't have their ID badge, or for an adult that doesn't have a badge such as this. And people give me a hard time for 17 months. I wear this badge every single day. They go, we know who you are. It doesn't matter. I want to make sure that I model the same activities that I ask my schools to participate in, along with my teachers and my students. But we want to make certain that we have greater structure, so we're just not opening the door for left, right, and center. We had an unfortunate situation that happened at Oak Cliff the other day, where a kid was opening the door for a kid that looked 19, 20 years old. After dismissal, he ran inside and he caused a major disruption. And we can't do that. And the young lady didn't know she was opening the door. But that's why we got to have additional funding to have security, unarmed monitors, and to be able to log central patterns of the way kids come and go from schools. But the fence, we're all over it.
Mr. Davis, there were two questions very similar, so I've combined them.
Yes, ma'am.
Will the school guidance counselor and school psychologist roles or duties be restructured so that more time can be spent working with students providing guidance?
Yeah, school counselors are definitely one that we've got to do a better job at. We have, and this is not only an issue in Clay County, but throughout the nation, school counselors get dumped on every day. Hey, guess what? Here's testing. Go do testing. Versus trying to find, steps to get to our classrooms. And that's me working with leaders, that's me working with school counselors to figure out how we free up their schedules in order to see kids independently, individually, but also to get to more classrooms. The school counselors got in this business to help kids, to educate kids. So we want to get them in greater time on task in classrooms and eliminate some of the other activities that doesn't impact or even be even aligned with their job description. So that is a priority for me moving in 18-19 to figure out what we can do to have greater assistance. And a school psychologist, we want them to have a greater focus on being in schools to be able to help be a partner in our work as well. So both of them, yes, we would definitely look at it. School counselor, I know for sure, is on my list to redefine to not redefine the role, but to make sure that they have greater accessibility to kids.
Speaking on early indicators,
Yep.
has any consideration been given to changing the RTI MTSS process to give students help more quickly when it is clearly needed?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keystone has a good model from the RTI process and what they do to be able to have greater supports. And actually, I believe that this is the model in the school for what they do, and they have all hands on deck in order to have early warning indicators. We want to figure out how we can duplicate the model here within Keystone in order to grow that throughout the school district. But we want to be able to have a model that meets the needs of our learners and not one that's just more built on hard structure consequences or restricted learning environments. We want ones that are more inclusive of resources, one that has greater preventions and interventions for kids, and the one that pushes everyone on the RTI MTSS process to think differently, to think about kids versus thinking about just pushing kids to certain labels or certain processes or certain services. Make sure the services make sense. Make sure that they're getting the interventions and resources they need, and understand that it could go greater than just that student and may be able to link to the family. So how do we holistically develop everyone and have a mindset of better helping kids? If that makes sense.
What about instead of having guns,
Yep.
can the staff and the teachers have accessibility to a projectile-based taser system to incapacitate the perpetrator?
Yeah, tasers in schools, and I would tell you that hopefully to have any weapon on campus, it is against the law. You cannot have, it's against the only individuals that can come to campus and have that carry a weapon are law enforcement. So tasers are considered a weapon and could cause harm. That is something from my side that we will not entertain because we'll be going against state statute. My job as superintendent is to make sure that we are always aligned with state statute and taking steps to make sure we protect the working conditions of our adults, but also can protect our students as well. Anything on that, Chief?
Yeah, with all the discussion about weapons in the hands of teachers or faculty members, you gotta just having a gun in your hands is not gonna stop a threat. You gotta be trained. You gotta know that you're gonna be able to react whenever the bullets start flying, the bombs start going off. Are you gonna choose to protect the students in your room, or are you gonna leave your students alone and go out in the hallway? How are you gonna engage law enforcement when they enter the building? There's a whole facet of different things and issues that you have to understand. Any of you who have not been put in a stressful situation when you've encountered an armed assailant, you don't know how you're going to react. Everybody has a fight or flight, and many of you don't know how you're going to react to that. And we've seen that time and time again where people get hurt or hurt others simply because they weren't properly trained and they don't have the experiences necessary to react to those situations.
Sure, good point. And in looking at common sense, you'd think, yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and put additional weapons in schools for leaders, for teachers, and for support staff. The problem is when a resource officer and the young men and women in green walk into the school with a situation and they see Addison Davis. Let's just say I'm the principal of Addison Davis, and I have a weapon in the hallway and I have it up and I'm running down the hallway. What are they going to do? I can tell you. I don't want to tell you. That individual, he said it, that individual is probably going to, be addressed by that resource officer. and by that officer, and then that puts one of my employees in a bad situation. And it's my job to think differently about it and allow law enforcement to continue to be our partner in this. So when they come in, they truly understand that no one on our campus is armed, but then when they're ready to address any unfortunate situation if exposed to it.
Just one more question, Mr. Davis, and I thought we might want to mention that at all the Listen and Learns, we're capturing all the questions and comments and saving them. What is the possibility of using military to protect our campuses like many European countries do instead of the local police?
I mean, it's another option, I would say. From our side, once again, it makes sense to have someone that has the ability and skill set in order to be armed to be in our school district. But I'm always going to err on the side of law enforcement. I'd much rather have law enforcement in our schools that have been actively, trained and ready and prepared. Not in the disrespect. I believe that we have veterans that can do a great job and stand strong in order to protect our kids. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But if it comes to an option of whether or not I'm weighing if I have district staff, operational staff, veterans, or teachers versus law enforcement, I'm going to actively engage law enforcement every single day of the work. They are entrenched in active, relevant trainings. They are prepared with that mindset and ready to protect our kids and our adults every single day. But I appreciate it. It's a good part of thinking. I think that they would do a good job, but I stand ready with the young men and women in green to stand with me. Anything on Facebook Live? Nope? Okay, so thank you so very much. We have two posters, one for suggestions for safety, one suggestions for mental health. If you feel that you have additional suggestions for recommendations of how we can continue to grow and evolve, please, there may be some post-it notes that on this chair that you can leave your any suggestions or recommendations. We are collecting all this information, these feedback into these questions in order to inform our practice so that we can have a better school district. So I thank you for being here. Thank you for committing to public education, and I look forward to continuing the great work in Keystone. Have a good night.